Primary and caucus season has started, but it's about to get into full swing. On today's episode of Election Watch, Janice and I will talk about what the election landscape looks like right now, the recent primaries and caucuses, provide some insight on what's coming up, and answer some viewer questions. Janice, did I miss anything?
No, that about covers it. Let's start with the landscape as of this filming on February 13th. We've not had many primaries or caucuses, but it's becoming more and more clear who the frontrunners are. There also is a February 13th special election in New York to fill the House seat vacated by expelled Representative George Santos. We can't say as we are filming today who will win this toss-up contest, but the Long Island special election is attracting attention as a potential barometer for the November elections that will determine control of both the White House and the Congress. And as we both know, in election time, an afternoon in the news cycle could cause dramatic changes.
Yeah, look, I have no doubt that whatever the result of this special election is, both sides are going to overread the result, right? We are talking about a district that is at best being rented, right? This district is going to change. New York is redrawing its boundaries. Democrats are going to try to write, a map that is more favorable to their own sort of political party. Republicans were very successful the last cycle around. Democrats are going to try to undo it. They are going to expend and will have expended a ton of political treasure for a seat that is going to look pretty different by the time we get to the 2024 election cycle. But look, the political press is like on set to high. They got something to cover. They're going to cover it, and we're all going to overread the result. This, I am sure of. I have no idea who's going to win, but I am confident we're going to overread the results. So with that, Janice, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that have happened. We had Nevada for Republicans, South Carolina for Democrats, U.S. Virgin Islands for Republicans. Just walk us through what happened and what do we think it means?
Let me start with South Carolina. I think that's easier. That was a feel-good moment for President Biden. He won it easily with 96% of the vote, and he needed some good news. The national polling is all over the place on presidential candidates. It has Trump ahead, it has Biden ahead by a lot or a little. So it's confusing right now. And he's being attacked about his age and his competency. People's personal views about him are negative, as they are about the direction of government. And Democrats aren't as engaged in this election yet as much as Republicans are. So we needed that feel-good moment, and he got it. Nevada has always intrigued me. They established a primary after the Democrats in 2020 couldn't report their caucus results very well. Took them days and weeks to do it. So the government set up this primary. The Republicans decided in the end they didn't want a primary, but it was already in the law. So they had a caucus where they actually chose the delegates. Donald Trump was on the ballot there. Nikki Haley was not. In the primary, Nikki Haley stayed on the ballot, and she ended up losing because 50,000 Nevadans voted for none of the above in that primary. So she didn't even come out of that as a winner. I just find that terribly intriguing. And then in the Virgin Islands, Donald Trump got all 4 of those votes. He only needed 187 people voting for him to succeed at that.
Yeah, so I had a couple reactions to those developments. So first in Nevada, Ambassador Haley made what I think seemed like a good bet ex ante, which is I'm going to run in the primary. No delegate is going to be awarded. That's okay. I'm going to run in the primary. Primaries attract more voters than caucuses. And if I come out on the top of the primary list, maybe at the end of the week, I'll be able to say I got more votes than Donald Trump. But the Trump campaign, to its credit, mobilized his voters to vote in the primary and to pick none of the above, right? As sort of a proxy for voting for Trump. He couldn't be on the primary ballot because the rules were you couldn't be both on primary and caucus ballot. And caucus ballot is where the delegates were being awarded. So that turned out not to be a great bet for Ambassador Haley. The other thing that I was sort of paying attention to, as you mentioned, President Biden needed some good news, lots of questions about his age. There was a special counsel report on the classified documents that Biden had in his garage. And, one of the conclusions, the one that got the most attention was, look, we're not going to find criminal charges because, President Biden is having memory issues and can't even remember when he was vice president. So goes the reporting. And so we would never be able to get a conviction. So that sort of set up a bad news cycle for the president. But in comes former President Trump, who decides, you know what, I have thoughts on NATO, right? And got asked and said, yeah, I might encourage Russia to attack a NATO country if it wasn't paying its dues. He didn't say I would encourage you to attack it. He said they can do whatever they want, but it was sort of an invitation. If you attack a NATO country that's not current on its dues, we might sit this one out. It's totally scrambled the news cycle, shifted attention away from the special counsel report, Biden's age, memory issues, caused the press to ask a bunch of Republicans, do you agree with former President Trump about this NATO thing? So look, message discipline was never the former president's forte. That continues to be the case. And I think this is just going to be one of many examples where something bad is happening in the press for President Biden. And then former President Trump says something that distracts us all and takes the focus off. Last but not least, 187 votes in the U.S. Virgin Islands makes you the winner of 4 delegates. I feel like I could move to the Virgin Islands and be a power broker in Republican politics in the U.S. Virgin Islands, but I don't think I could convince my wife to do that. Okay, enough of that. Let's talk about what's coming up next. We got South Carolina for Republicans and Michigan for both Democrats and Republicans. What do you sort of see happening there?
Well, I think Trump is going to continue to lead, but Michigan gives Nikki Haley a chance. Its voters are more diverse, potentially more educated. Give her a chance to show some momentum, but it is not clear to me, unless she continues to get as much financial backing as she's had in the past, how she continues forever. He is so volatile. There are these court cases out there. She's just kind of trying to bide her time to be the non-Donald Trump if an occasion rises for that to be needed.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think her theory of the case at the moment is, look, I've just got to survive long enough for something that is disqualifying from the former president to happen so that I can kind of emerge as a phoenix, from the ashes. But it's really hard for me to see what that looks like. I mean, look, an appeals court rules that, Donald Trump not immune from prosecution for his activities at the end of his presidential term, right? He's poised to romp in South Carolina, state for which he is the former governor. Pretty much all the elected officials in South Carolina have endorsed former President Trump, including Senator Tim Scott, who I think is sort of eyeing potential vice presidential slot. And so the question is, if he really dominates in South Carolina, as we expect he will, can she politically survive? Not like she stay on the ballot? She can, but do the dollars, the resources continue to flow into her coffers? She's had no trouble raising money, even despite the fact that she's not winning these races. But I wonder at what point do the political donors who donate and play in Republican politics say, you know what, it was a good run. We tried our best. We're going to shift our focus and attention to the congressional races, to the Senate in particular, where Republicans feel like they have a real opportunity to pick up the chamber, and sort of de-emphasize funding the Haley campaign. That's the thing that I think is going to be hard to manage, the politics of South Carolina. Can she limp into Michigan? Does she continue to get funding, or do the donors say, look, it was nice, but we're doing something else now?
I also just wonder how she can swing into the Republican convention this summer and convince all of those diehard red Republicans that favor Donald Trump to suddenly vote for her as their candidate for president. I think she's challenged.
Yeah. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about was just what we're hearing from companies about the election, how they're starting to think about the issues. And I'll tell you, what I'm hearing primarily is a desire to talk about, there are 3 versions of government we might have in 2025, Democratic sort of sweep, Republican sweep, or divided government. And what do each of those kind of portend for what happens at the end of 2025 with all of the TCJA 2017 tax cuts provisions, at least on the individual and pass-through side, all those expiring, $4.5 trillion of stuff that someone will want to extend. How do companies start to think through that? I don't know. What are you hearing, Janice?
Exactly the same thing. They want to know where they're vulnerable, in what circumstances their taxes will be increased, and how can they plan for it and begin to get ready. And I am suggesting in that context, they all get to know people in Congress. This is the time to build those relationships. We'll have to end it there for this episode of Election Watch. March is going to be a very busy month with 57 primaries and caucuses. Rohit, think we could summarize those in 5 to 10 minutes?
Look, I might be able to summarize it in one word, but you'll have to join us in March for the big reveal. Thank you for joining us for Election Watch 2024. Until next time, take care.